Constitutions, it is Thursday, March 20th. We're shifting gears. We're talking about some land transfers now in the town of Waterbury. This is called call it Rainbow, but it's Randall Metal. It is a piece of property that we currently own. It's the Waterbury Complex. We do lease it to a farmer for growing corn. There's a proposal of the town of Waterbury would like to take ownership of this piece of property so that they could do silt removal and recontour the property so that it would protect homes on Randall Street in particular, where it abuts this piece of property because flooding has occurred 3 or 4 times in a very short period of time for those property owners. And this would be a way of mitigating it. The town of Waterbury would like us to transfer the piece of property to them so they could do some long-term remediation of the property. They were here, all the parties were here yesterday. There needed to be more discussion between the state and the town of Waterbury, so we sent them off yesterday, go up to the cafeteria, figure it out. They did have a proposal, I believe, that they would like to put before us. So I will start with the Commissioner of Buildings.
Thank you. Yes.
So
Chair seems awful low today.
I just sat down, but that's okay. It's
Like you're at the kids' table.
Very low.
I like eating dinner at the kids' table, to be honest with you. Sometimes it's much, I can't, I'm good. I'll let someone else play with it.
I'll start.
So good morning, Wanda Manoli, Commissioner of Buildings and General Services. Thank you for that summary, Madam Chair. Yesterday was, I really appreciated having the opportunity to listen to the town of Waterbury and what they're trying to accomplish that really can make a difference in conversations as we work forward. We went to the cafeteria, but then we actually went back to the Department of Buildings and General Services, and we did a working session, really understanding what the town of Waterbury is trying to accomplish with their mitigation, their long-term flood mitigation. And I actually reached out to Doug Farnham to understand one of the issues that we had on the table was, is there a FEMA application? Is there not a FEMA application? What is the state actually doing with that? So if I could just, in general, talk about the property. And then I think it would be great for the committee to hear from Mr. Farnham and then ask the town manager sort of to close and answer any questions. But if we could have the map that we forwarded, that's online, brought up. So it will be there. This is like my internet at home.
It's there.
It's there. So actually, when you look at this map, one of the things we did is we went into the property documentation to see what do we actually have in Waterbury? How is it subdivided? Is it subdivided? Is it, what are the parameters around the property? And we actually have 2 subdivisions. And so I'm going to just point here, this is another subdivision. So the green and the underlay is what our current subdivision is on that property. The area that Waterbury, is looking at is what is in the orange.
And that's 47.76 acres.
Yes, and what I would ask the committee to do, if you're going to move forward with supporting this request, we don't get into the acreage and because these are our estimates, but we do have parcel numbers, and that's what we should be referring to. So we talked about their desire. We looked at our need. We know this site cannot be developed, this acre. We do have a farmer that leases the land and working with Waterbury for farming. The lease is just a little bit over $3,000 a year. It's not a large financial it's an affordable lease. I think Tom will speak about the importance of their partnership with their community members when we get to that. So I have flexibility with the lease. It goes to 27. We can transfer lease. We have out clause. We have to engage if you do propose language with, with the current leaseholder. We have notified him that we were in these conversations, so this owner is not unaware of what we are exploring, and I think that's really important. There's value that Tom's going to talk about, and he has talked about that in having control of this property for the town of Waterbury's flood mitigation. So based on the questions that were asked yesterday, if you consider moving forward with this in transfer or selling, if you choose to transfer, we would ask for a notwithstanding to Title 29, 166B. That would be extremely important. We
Can
would
you cite that again? Not
Title 20,
No, but I'd like to have.
Title 29 VSA 166 small b.
Okay.
And that's where we have to do fair market value, et cetera. You can look at it. But to authorize us to subdivide and transfer the land in Waterbury, we do have the parcel number that's commonly referred to as the Randall Meadow, which we can provide to Ledge Council if you'd like, for the town of Waterbury to do their flood mitigation. You asked us, are there any guardrails or any conditions that we should consider, Madam Chair? And we talked about that yesterday. And we would think, we know that to transfer the property or to sell it, that we would want the opportunity to work with the town of Waterbury to ensure that the subdivision reflects our stormwater management needs. And that is why, without getting, and if Joe can identify them, but I don't know if you need to know it. That's why the overlay of the orange on the green, because that's outlining where we know some of our stormwater deposits are, and we want to be able to maintain that for the complex.
Is that for the 3-acre parcel thing?
It's for the total site, but also Main Street has some of their stormwater that exits out there also. So it's a combined system on the western side, both sides actually.
Yeah. We definitely agreed that we have to have a plan or an understanding on how to align the current lease that we just talked about regarding the farming that occurs and completion of any necessary permits that are required to transfer the property. And through our discussions, those seem to be the higher level, and they're not roadblocks. They're items that we have to work through that we would normally have to work through if we were to sell or if we were to transfer. So it was a successful meeting. I really appreciate everyone just coming to the table. We provided a workspace for Tom. And so thank you for the opportunity for us to work together to come back to you. The issue on FEMA, I think on the silt, and I had raised it because of what I understood. I'd like to, if you don't have questions for me, to turn it over to Doug and he can talk to you about that overall, if that is acceptable to the members.
Yeah, but I have a question. So you're fine with transferring. You would transfer it with no fee. It'd be not even $1. It would just.
We will support the decision of the legislature if you choose to transfer it or sell it. The preference, and I'm speaking on behalf of Waterbury, is a transfer because of the amount of money that they're going to be investing in this property. I can tell you that we cannot develop that piece of parcel to the Waterbury complex. Would serve Waterbury in their long-term vision much more than it's going to be for us to use. We will continue to lease it.
So if we transfer, no fee, no charge, we have to notwithstand the part of statute that requires you to let go of property at fair market value.
That is correct.
Okay, just want to be clear for the committee to know.
That is absolutely correct.
Any questions? Let you know. Okay.
Thank you. Do
Yeah, you want to come on up and talk to us about the FEMA piece? Because yesterday, what, if folks remember, the town manager or the folks that were here from Waterbury, town manager in particular, mentioned that when there was the flooding back in 23, I think it was 24, 23, the town of Waterbury asked the state to submit an application to FEMA on behalf of this piece of property. And it was, they were under the understanding there was no application that had been submitted. And we wanted to go back and check that. So you're our FEMA guru. So Doug, if you could just identify yourself for that.
Absolutely, Madam Chair. For the record, Douglas Farnham, Chief Recovery Officer for the state. Thank you for having me. It's nice to be back in the committee. I would say, as things often go with FEMA, the information was accurate, yet not complete and in a very confusing system. I can try to help add clarity. So for the progression here, we had the 2023 flood, which added a significant amount of debris around the state, right? No debris remediation was included as part of the 2023 flood. We had that conversation with Waterbury between I think it was before the 2024 floods. And after the 2024 floods, I requested the BGS take two steps. And both steps were initiated. One was to remove the debris, the sediment that was deposited in the 2024 flood from the cornfield. That project was created with FEMA, but due to a lack of communication, and I'll own it, not explaining the requirements, driving the outcome thoroughly enough, we didn't actually take any steps to remove the debris. And with debris removal with FEMA, you don't wait on their approval. You do it and then you justify it. And because winter started and the farmer has now taken action on that piece of land, debris removal at that site is no longer something that we would be able to justify to FEMA because the record has been clouded at this point. So last fall, we did start the process to do debris removal, but it wasn't successfully performed. So that's, I think, on AOA for not driving that thoroughly enough and make sure everyone understood what needed to happen in order to, that would have been a tiny slice of what Waterbury would like to accomplish there. So it would have removed just the sediment that was deposited in 2024. It would have been a helpful step, but it certainly would not be everything that Waterbury is trying to accomplish. It would be a very small portion, but it would have been beneficial. The second aspect is to submit an application to the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program for something closer to what Waterbury would like to achieve at that site, but based on what the state knew at the time, that application was submitted. But with the hazard mitigation grants, we are almost entirely consumed by buyouts at this point in time. So because of the way we are prioritizing immediate risk to life safety and prioritizing buyouts, they're essentially, even for projects which have a really high return on investment, when you look at how much we're removing, how much flood risk we're reducing, we're having a very small pool of funds available to floodplain restoration and risk reduction projects. Buyouts are essentially consuming the entire award. So while that application for hazard mitigation for the cornfield was submitted, it did not make it high enough in the scoring, and mostly because it was not a buyout of residential or commercial property to be awarded funds. And that wasn't the criteria and the process for awarding that buyout is done through the Vermont Emergency Management hazard mitigation staff in coordination with the Department of Environmental Conservation, the Rivers team. It's a very technical evaluation. It looks at it from a scientific perspective. There's not really any appointing authorities involved in how those awards are granted. So it's very much based on the science and the numbers. And I monitor it at a high level, but I do not interfere with the integrity of that process because I do think it's important that it is scientific and based on rigor. And so this piece of land, I think there is a great project for Waterbury there. But I think when you compare it on the statewide scale, it's unlikely that in the current round of hazard mitigation or the next round that it is going to be a candidate to receive funding. Waterbury owning the parcel of land could actually help them with some of the federal programs. And I can say it absolutely will not hurt their chances to perform work at that site. It can only help for Waterbury to own the land as opposed to the state of Vermont. Doing mitigation projects on state land is actually, for some reason, more complicated than doing it on municipal land. So the subdivision and identifying the portion that would be involved in a specific project, there are hopefully still some opportunities coming out, additional rounds of federal funding through USDA Rural Development. One of my other hats is Clean Water Board Chair, and there's also a potential for a clean water style project at the site, which
It's not out of the capital bill, right?
well, the capital bill is only a small portion of the clean water funding. So yeah, I think the programs that would assist that site, I don't believe are from the capital bill portion primarily. So yes, the application was submitted. I tried to be upfront with Waterbury that it was going to be very competitive. And I would say one thing I'm trying to remember exactly when that conversation occurred. I think it was before the 24 floods. But one thing that became more and more clear after the 2024 floods was that our buyout request doubled or tripled because it really added a lot of mental trauma, a lot of emotion into the process. And it tipped the scales for a lot of Vermonters to proceed with that buyout. So even though the 2024 events were technically smaller than the three, they tripled the amount of buyout interest. And that's one thing that ended up consuming kind of tilting the scales to where I was thinking we would have half for buyouts, half for floodplain restoration, roughly. And it's almost entirely buyouts at this point.
So was the application with FEMA withdrawn for Waterbury, or it's still there, but it really isn't going to amount to anything because the priority is going towards the buyouts?
It's more the latter. So the one point of clarity, so FEMA gives us the top level award. Right now, they've given us an award for 67 million of federal share. And the state, Vermont Emergency Management, runs the program. So they accept all of the applications. So the application was made to Vermont Emergency Management. But Vermont Emergency Management, in comparing it to and rating it alongside all those other projects, it's not in a position to get funding right now.
So if we transfer the land to Waterbury, does that negate anything with FEMA in terms of the state level?
No, the debris project is moot at this point, I would say. It's kind of off the table. And it would not void anything as far as ability to, it would only potentially improve the ability to get federal funding.
Questions? Comments? Okay,
All right.
thank you, Doug.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
What's your name? Oh, your name, and I forgot it. Tom? It's Tom, right? Yeah, Tom West.
Mike's municipal manager for Waterbury.
Welcome again.
Very much. I just want to start by thanking Wanda for her hospitality and for helping us with this, and thanking Doug, for the same. The town agrees with everything that Wanda said in terms of the parcel and in terms of the need to work out an agreement with the farmer. Couple points I want to make. The first is that the language in front of you refers to BGS paying for the engineering.
Right.
And while we would certainly love the help, we understand that requires an appropriation. And if somehow that language isn't available without an appropriation, it's a challenge for BGS, which could delay things. So I think from our perspective, we're not necessarily arguing for that. We're arguing for the transfer to occur relatively quickly. I know the legislature has the purview to allow for a transfer or a sale. In terms of the transfer, I would like to make an argument for the town. I think the main argument is that any work the town does in this parcel will also go to protect the state office complex.
Right.
And from that perspective, transfer is appropriate. The other piece I'd want to say is that the town receives a very substantial pilot payment from the state of Vermont for all the state property. About $383,000 in this past year. And for context, our tax levy is 4.4 million. By virtue of this parcel changing hands, it might be on the margins, but our pilot payment will decrease also. So we're having a small revenue loss related to it. So I'm hoping that, I think that's a compelling argument that a transfer is appropriate rather than a sale. And with that, I just want to thank everyone again. And I think every point that we wanted to make has been made by Doug and by Wanda.
Well, I'm glad that everyone was able to meet yesterday, with this through face to face. That's the way I've always operated in this committee. If things can be resolved by going off-site, going up to the cafeteria and really have a face to face discussion, quite often within a day, issues get resolved. So I really appreciate folks being willing to do this. Questions for the committee?
I just echo, I want to thank particularly the commissioner. This is good government right here. It's really responsive. It's in both our best interest there. And I'm just really glad we didn't have to delay this after we gavel out or something. So thanks very much, everybody.
Yep.
So where is the committee in terms of support of a transfer? Joe? Where's the
Oh,
committee in
sorry.
terms of? Oh.
Frankly, I'm a little apprehensive of it being zero, but I'm not. But I would certainly be amenable to it being below market value.
Okay,
And I'm not an expert on the subject, but I know, ag field that floods, my guess is worth in real life, it's probably worth $4,000 an acre, somewhere in that ballpark.
the least.
And I'm not proposing that there be something of that nature, but I think somewhere, there should be something, because that land belongs to all Vermonters. And we'd be conveying it to one community. But that's,
Did you hear the conversation about the pilot payments? And that right now that might decrease by shifting it from state ownership to town ownership. They'd lose a little bit in pilot payments. And that would be offset if they could do the transfer instead of purchasing. That was just mentioned,
James says it's
Will and then James.
Do you know how much that pilot payment would approximately decrease by, or is that still to be determined?
I don't, I'm sorry, I can't even speculate on that.
Be pretty minimal.
I would-
47 acres or
Well, that's-
give plus or minus. James?
That's what I was just gonna say, 20 years as a municipal assessor. That land, as far as the pilot, probably be de minimis, to use that word, it would be very little. But the bigger part and the more compelling part is that your work would help our facility, which is owned by all Vermonters. The question becomes how much the state has to put in for this project down the road versus what Waterbury is putting in. And I understand that there's compelling reason for a partnership there still. But I also understand that, and I think Doug said this very well, is that it's going to probably move quicker with you guys owning it. So I don't have a problem with it. I just was going to point out that the pilot part will probably be pretty insignificant, but the other part will be pretty significant.
I'll hold you to the insignificant part.
The complex itself is going to be the largest part. A house is worth more than an acre of land. You know what I mean?
So the committee is supportive of the transfer.
Yeah.
What we need is parcel number instead of the acreage. And the notwithstanding language for fair market value. Do we want to put in any language in terms of making sure the leaseholder of the property is notified? I know that the commissioner did mention that they have notified. I don't know if we want to make sure we put in any language on that or any other language. Are we okay with just notwithstanding the fair market value to transfer, put in the parcel number?
Authorized to subdivide.
I mean, will that conversation with the landholder not necessarily happen anyway? But,
I mean, the petitioner
Yeah.
indicated they've already done that.
yeah.
Do we need language for subdivide? That would be up to Waterbury once it's transferred.
Well, she said something about that. One
What
of the
would you
mentions.
need it?
Need to subdivide the property, yes.
Just didn't want us to say the acreage,
Acreage,
just the
yeah.
Randall Meadow.
The parcel number.
It'll have to be surveyed to actually lay that out so that the stormwater falls on the right side of the line.
Tom, can you get us the parcel number and send that over?
They'll do that to.
Oh, okay,
They'll
sorry.
do that. to
All right.
John. That's what John is here for.
Gotcha.
And then about necessary permits, you need some permits and make sure that,
Yes, but don't know what they are. So we'll get the permit.
so could you folks work with John in terms of what, John Gray, in terms of what language really should be put in place on your part? And we're comfortable with this, right, committee?
Yes, we are.
Okay, so that's the next step. We'll get new
Comfortability.
language. We will also make sure that you, the town of Waterbury, receive the language before we do final approval. So if you could give your contact information to,
We'll give it to John. We have it.
okay, give it to John and then we can connect, follow up with you folks, because we want you to see the language before we give final authority in the final yes to the bill,
Thank you very much.
the language in there. Okay,
Excellent.
anything else? Thank you.
Thank you.
Easy. That was easy. So we're on the floor at 10:30, folks, and I'm assuming the ballots and all of that will take place and then lunch, but
You mean the Gladstone?
yeah, you're leaving at 11:30. So let's go out for future. We're gonna come back into the committee at some